First Pick Podcast, picks and perspective with Chris Johnson. Palpable.
How's that?
Oh, there you are.
There we go. Buttons, man.
Yeah. Wow. I love this scene already. All these guitars strewn about behind you.
It's a bit of a mess right now. We're doing some. There's the other room in the basement. We're going to try to finish the basement. This was only finished a couple months ago, and then the other rooms we're pulling stuff out of there. So this is just kind of just throw it in my riff shack. So
Cool.
It's kind of sucks, but whatever.
Well, everything is kind of temporary on one level or another, but sounds like at least you have a little spot to hang out until the good spot is.
Yeah. No, it's sort of like I've just been hunkered down writing now for a month or two.
Yeah, that's one of the major questions. Like that. This morning, there's this beautiful fan group on Facebook. I think you might be aware of for Big Rec, and I just typed in. I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna talk to Ian today. Has anybody got any questions?" And a bunch of them came up, but everyone's like, "Is he able to stay writing and stay motivated? Is it interesting? Are you able to be creative in this time?" Or
yeah. I mean, it's like anything else. It comes and goes, but as long as I'm still, I'm always sitting. There's always a guitar in my hand. So I'm like, if I'm not feeling something, I'll just put a metronome on and start practicing and start working on stuff that, the sort of daily upkeep or maintenance of anything technique related that I'll never end up using anyway. But it's fun to chase.
well, that's probably part of just like keeping the razor sharp, right? Just being able to have lots of mobility and not be restricted by technique at all. Yeah,
it gets harder as I get older. I find, it's harder to sort of shake the cobwebs off and I tend to hone in on different things at different times. But it's like, if I'm not picking too hard, then I'm squeezing too hard, and just all these little things that I have to. When I'm in writing mode, I'm not thinking about that stuff. I'm thinking from a very different perspective, and it's like just on the off chance that I might want to throw a solo in there, I better be in shape, But it is a nice. It's kind of like my hobby, right? It's a nice little break from the sort of hyper focus of writing and creating and trying to trick yourself into being inspired. And then if it's not working, you just kind of, I can just sort of hyper focus on something else. I have little sort of go-to things that I'll work on and try to, little benchmarky things that I'll try to improve on. But, even that is if it's not happening, it's not happening, It's a sort of day-to-day basis. Like today, it's not happening.
Wow. Well, you got this to look forward to instead.
Yeah, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see your face, man. I always love hearing from you, and I'm just so thankful. I woke up feeling really thankful for a bunch of reasons in life, but when I put on the new record, and just started letting it play this morning while I was cleaning and making coffee and stuff. And just kind of I don't know, there's something about hearing your voice that just makes me feel in a deep way too. And knowing that you're such a lover and you're interested in life and the guitar and passion and all these things and everything that we've kind of exchanged through the years just kind of come flooding into my life this morning. And I was like,
that's lovely to hear.
So wonderful. What's your latest guitar that you got there? What's the one you're holding?
This is the latest iteration of the SIG model from Sewer.
Ooh. So you got a different one other than the kind of
the Roughneck.
Yeah, the Roughneck.
Yeah, the Roughneck's not here right now, but that's been sort of my main guitar since that one arrived. now I've just had, we've kind of thinking like, what if we did it with maple? Because I'm generally a rosewood guy. But what if we did it with maple, and then what if we did with covered humbuckers, just mostly for aesthetics? And then it was like the color. I've always been a fan of like the Daphnes and the Sonic blues and like surf greens and seafoam. I love all that shit. And then it was like, well, I love Olympic white too, and this is finished in nitro. I don't know if you can see it, but it's checked. You can't. It's not as distressed as the other one.
Okay.
But I was like, well, what if you did like an Olympic white, but somebody kind of snuck in a couple drops of Sonic blue?
Ooh.
So that's what, I don't know what it looks like on the thing.
Kind of looks more Olympic white to me here. With I can see like a little tint.
In light, it's almost you can tell that that somebody snuck some Sonic blue in there. So yeah, no, I dick around with a lot of different guitars, and I'm constantly in and out of them. I never go into a sort. I've never, like, I don't open them up and fuck around with them. I leave them like they are. But there's a lot of patience behind me that are, it's just like, well, this isn't quite happening. I just pick up one of these, and it's like, there it is. It kind of covers all the ground I need. There's a couple of Les Pauls here. And again, it's just for demoing and writing. And sometimes you just sort of need that sound. I think I play a little differently on something like that. But there are bits to keep in tune, so there's that problem as well. And I'm a bit of a stickler for tuning. Even when things are slightly off, that's intentional. So yeah, I just can't beat these things. I just
It's so beautiful, man.
There's always one within arm's reach.
And the pickups that the Sewer makes are really, really fantastic. I remember playing a couple of your axes when you came down for the Dunlop sessions, and just being really impressed. So I understand why you wouldn't open them up or change them.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, if something goes awry inside there, Shaner, my art tech, he's pretty. He's got his chops up when it comes to soldering and because some of the switching in here, like these two guys are push for parallel on the humbuckers,
dude.
Which means that when you do look at under the hood, it's I mean, there's all kinds of different highways and pathways, and it's insane. The wiring, so I'm just like, that's way above my pay grade.
I love push knobs.
And it's usually just like like in the heat of battle, like on tour. I don't think anything's ever gone down. I think the worst thing that's ever happened to me with a sewer is that one of the pots will get scratchy from sweat or whatever, which I don't really sweat, but it's one of those things, changing climates and humidity and all that. Whatever, one of the pots will get scratchy. Shane will just go in and spray it. I had one of my 5-way switches go at one point, and luckily I was in Southern California, so I just the guys at Sewer came, and 5 minutes later it was like, okay, no, my 5-way's not scratchy anymore. It was done.
Amazing.
So yeah, I don't see a need to. There's something sort of. So anybody that's put that much thought and care into that I'm not going to fuck with that.
Yeah, well, I think it says something about because there's a handful of guitar manufacturers out there that do make their own pickups and make a lot of their own components. And when somebody usually when a company like that goes to those lengths, they're really trying to match those electronics with these woods and with these creations and the way that these cavities are worked. So.
And if you've ever had a conversation with John, I'm not going to improve on anything that he's, there's no like, what would really work here? Like, I think I got an old DiMarzio kicking around here that might make it's just, no, man. It's just a different level of care and precision. And you can feel it when you play them. You can hear it. And it's like, it's kind of like, don't fuck with it. Just leave it like it is. Other guitars that are, just sort of cheap and cheerful, why not?
Sure.
If something doesn't have you want a humbucker in the bridge or something, it's like, well, I don't have a router, but I got a hammer and a chisel. It'll work.
We'll make this thing sound good.
Just put a pick guard, you're good to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'd never do that with something that's already set up perfectly.
Yeah, it's kind of well, that's, you know, the when the stuff is cheap and you're just like picking stuff off of the used shelf, it's kind of, that's part of the game, is just a hot rod. But we're in an age now where there's brands like Sur, you know, and Kiesel and like Tom Anderson, and people that put together real high quality things, you know, instruments and tools that they're already a complete ecosystem. Yeah. Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I got no complaints there, man. I'm just a lucky guy when it comes to guitars. You know, being hooked up with John is like, so he's such a great guy. We've become such a good friend, and you know, I was talking to somebody the other day about it, like this, in the Zoom or whatever, and it's like it's just a brain like his. If you ask him one question that's sort of tone related, you better be sitting down when you want to get that answer, because it's going to be long and detailed, and there are so many aspects to, and detailed aspects to, you know, just having something like this put together that someone like me would never consider, and just, you know, well, how does that affect that? And then, okay, well, here we go. And he'll break it down for you, because he's actually done the research. He's reverse engineered every aspect of it, and sort of taken notes along the way. And him and his son, Kevin, they're both, their brains are intimidatingly detailed, and knowledgeable. And at the same time, they both just want to plug in a guitar, crank it up, and feel it, you know. So it's like there's that great best of both worlds thing when it comes to, because I can't speak that language, you know.
Sure.
I just kind of go, yeah, it rips. You know? Like, that's the extent of my, like, yeah, that really smokes, man. You know, I'm not ohmage and capacitors and resistors, and that's just way beyond me.
Well, they must have. It's good that your that John and that whole crew can be able to kind of change, you know, like modulate their way of speaking to get across what it is, you know, right? Translation, interpretation. That's what it is, right? Yeah.
And I try to articulate it the best I can with the limited, you know, sort of vocabulary with that stuff. I try to articulate the best I can the things I like. But and again, when you talk to somebody like that who's been around so many players, and every as you know, every player is different. Everybody holds the instrument differently. Everybody touches differently, and you know, to be able to, I think he has an innate ability to see and hear the way somebody does something and say, you know what would be interesting there, even down to a wood choice, which is, I'm just, what, you know, because it is the kind of thing, like I said earlier, I'll play differently on a 24 3/4 scale guitar than I will on something like this. I just, I'm a reactive player. You play, and then it's like when somebody's like, well, what if you tried this? And whoa, you know, it's interesting, you know, it's like somebody who really knows their craft like that. Anyway, I'm just constantly doing commercials for John, for sure. It's such a great company. There's such great people, and they do good work, you know, so.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's been a long time relationship that served you really well, both of you.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of tonal considerations, it would be great to hear what your journey has been and with the guitar pick, and where your relationship started, and like what you remember about your first couple of guitar picks, and then how you got where you're at now. Yeah.
Well, I like anybody, I probably started with like a Fender Medium, like your normal shape and the sort of traditional shape and size of a pick. When I first started, I probably started guitar around 16, and there was a pick around. I didn't really use it because I came from piano, so I already had some dexterity in my right hand, and I was getting into finger pickers and that kind of thing. But still, you want to strum, and you get a lot more volume and sort of articulation from strumming with a pick. But I would always drop it in the sound hole of the acoustic, and it just wasn't happening. And not till when I got to school, when I got to Berkeley, and it was Brian who really helped me zone in on picking. And then I started really getting into Eric Johnson and Steve Morse. So I was a big fan of him for a while before I got to Berkeley. But I always kind of figured that those guys do something that's a mystery. And then when you're around people, in a environment like Berkeley where it's everybody's a nerd and some people can do things that other people can't, it's like, oh, wait a second, okay, that's how you do that. Oh, it lifts the curtain a little bit. And once I got my hands on a Jazz 3, that was my main pick for years and years and years. Once I started really learning how to pick, and then I would go back and forth. I would go to if I was playing, just if I was doing, like, in the early Thornley days, there wasn't a lot of guitar soloing going on, and I was playing 13s, so I would just use a big green Tortex thing that I could beat on the strings with. Yeah, but I always found that they were kind of clumsy for getting around, at least for me. And if I wanted to, hustle, I would grab a Jazz 3. I could find a little more control. And then the Ultex thing came out, and they didn't wear out. My only problem with the Jazz 3 is that they get scratchy and they kind of wear out quickly. The red ones. I didn't really like the tone of the black ones as much. I like the red ones.
Interesting.
But they'd wear out quick. And then the Ultex ones came along, the sort of the yellowy, see-through, goldeny ones. They're not see-through. They're sort of opaque. You know the ones I mean. Yeah,
they're a little translucent. They have got a little bit of light that comes through. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I still have some here. And I was like, it felt like home, but I liked the tone of them, and they didn't seem to wear down. And then I got a Jazz 3 XL, and I was like, ooh, like it's the same sort of edge, but there's a little more to grab onto. And I was like, I don't know, I just liked it for hybrid picking. For some reason, I wasn't as close to the strings or something. And I was just waiting forever for an Ultex Jazz 3 XL. And then that came out, and that was my pick for years. And then you introduced me to the prime tone thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was just like, okay, well, this one's even better. It just kept improving and felt better. And then when we were in San Francisco, and you came down with a little baggie. It was like our pick dealer. Like, hey, man, check this out. I got something for you. And I was these flow picks. And yeah, I just, the 2.0, the green one. And I can't get enough. I can't get away from these ones. I don't know these guys.
That's the Jumbo 2.0, right?
Yeah, I love them. And actually, on the last tour, I was really getting into the 1.5 or 1.4, whatever, the red one, which is not as big. And honestly, that's just for the way it sounds. There's a little less chirp on the pick attack, but I can hustle a lot more with the 2.0s. And then when I got home, I found a bag of these, the little original size Jazz 3 prime tone one.
Oh, those are fire.
And I just, I'm just like, well, it just kind of refocuses my picking hand. And then there's picks all over this table here, and I just kind of grab one and start, and then kind of move around. And if there's no set thing. If I was going to play a show, I'd just grab a green 2.0 or a red, but probably a green one. But these little guys, man, they can really, it's just a control thing. I find it harder to do hybrid picking with these guys because my hand is a little closer and I don't have this sort of perspective with my hand.
No, I can see that.
And then the blue ones, the blue flow picks, killer strumming pick.
The 73.
I guess so. Yeah, it's really bendy.
Yeah, that's the lightest
A
one.
killer strumming pick.
Yeah.
Like I love the sound of it on the string. And if you play quick, it's got some snap to it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I move around, but I honestly I don't know what happened with the geometry of that flow shape where it's kind of rounded it just kind of, yeah. I don't know.
Strange.
Just added an extra gear to everything I do.
I love that you kind of you've studied it and you've looked at it and seen it enough to know, because it's one of those things where it's such a small difference, but and it's really the Jazz Tone 208 shape. It's an older Dunlop shape that they had put together this whole series, and then it just all came back around, like we were looking, well, how do we move into the future? And it was like, Dunlop's already done so many things. It's like a lot of times we had to stop and take a look back and go, we've already, you know what? We never did that in Ultex, and we never did it in multiple gauges, and we never put a grip on it, and it took an artist to come through. Hey, can I get one like that? And we're like, shit, that might be the thing right there.
Bingo.
Yeah. And it's been,
bingo, kids, play faster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I'll never forget that night in SF. You were like getting trying to adjust to the 2.0 jumbo, and you're like, man, kids with guns, man, what the hell? Like, it was like so fast and so. Yeah,
I've never played with a pick this thick before. I mean, I've dicked around with it. I've had friends Alan Johannes loves thick picks and plays all that gypsy stuff. And there were some guys at Berkeley that were using those stubbies. Sure. And that always just felt like alien. I felt like I was playing with a marble. They just felt so alien. But for some reason, this one just was. It was an easy transition. I just went for it.
Speaking of stubby, these aren't out yet, but Jimmy gave me a few at NAMM and sent me a few more. He's almost done with them, but they're called Flow Gloss, and it's got the same type of like indentation for the grip that Stubby had, but it's technically the Flow shape, and it's made out of Ultem. So this is oxblood red Ultem. Really cool. It comes in 2.0 and 3.0, but you can kind of see there's a little bit indentation. Yeah. These are coming probably sometime this year, I assume. I don't know exactly what he plans to do that with, but he went back because we went back and the Flow was such a success. He's like, man, Stubby used to be a thing. Like, what if I revamped the Stubby line, made it Ultem so it didn't wear as quick, and kind of improved the bevel and the grip. And so now, I mean, this is going to be a real hit, I think, for anybody that go.
I bet, right?
Yeah, they slay. They're a real and it's a different type of mold that kind of. Sometimes I get lost in the technical aspects of it, so I'm not claiming to know the details, but I know that the way that they created this mold so smoothly on the inside that they don't have to do any tumbling. So it comes out. That's why I call it the gloss. So it's smooth out of the mold without any burnishing or anything like that. Something new coming. If there wasn't enough picks to mess with before, there'll be a few more here soon.
That's with anything. I'll try anything.
Yeah, I love
that. It's nice to play with no pick at all. I love doing that.
I do too, but I haven't cultivated the same type of finger picking that you have, or even hybrid picking. But I do enjoy that.
You get a different. You gotta make good decisions. You can't just burn. I mean, you can with your left hand, but if you're just playing clean, I think right now, I'm pretty clean. And if I was just going to go with my fingers, and you have to make some. It's just about being tastier and a different focus. You hone in on the tone of the attack, fingernail or flesh and all that shit. It's a different thing. And then when you do both, of course, you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, you're one of those players that, and one of the reasons I would just speak for who I, players of the world for a moment here, just thinking that I think one of the reasons why we all admire your playing is your adherence to not only the craft of playing cool intricate leads and stuff like that, but the craft of dynamic in the songwriting and in how you touch the instrument and use the volume control, and like you seem to be very aware of that contrast.
I'm always on it. I mean, the guitar reacts differently. Most people know that the guitar reacts differently at different volumes. I just mean on the volume on the instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just probably years of jamming, you know, and playing live and stuff like that. The easiest, I've never really been a fan of the volume pedal as my main volume. I like it in the studio because you can do some interesting things. It's fun to solo with your foot on a volume pedal because it, like you say, it'll bring things in and pull things back, and there's a little more ebb and flow, and yeah, I do that sometimes with solos, and you might not even know it to hear it on the record, but there was a volume pedal in there. It just sort of helps you push and pull. I'm not necessarily doing swells and, you know, that sort of thing. It's more just about how it's like a horn player like would blow harder on a certain note or a certain passage and that kind of thing, which I find it reacts a little differently than doing it with your finger on the, you know. And plus you don't have to think about that. You just use it. But live, I can't. I have a volume pedal live that activates a second amp. But there's still always something going. There's always sound there. And if I need to cut it, I can just dump the volume. I did, you know, oftentimes I'll dump the volume and then come up a couple, and then I'll have something to work with. And there's always more on tap. But yeah, all those things, like, you know, I haven't spent as much time strictly working on blazing hot licks as a lot of guitar players, you know. And I think that's evident in a lot of the things that I do, because sometimes I'm pretty ham-fisted. But I think, you know, my focus has always been, I've always focused on a lot of different things at the same time. And if I'm lucky enough, I can sort of take a bird's eye and, you know, make sure that I'm taking care of the whole picture, you know. And then if you keep enough balls in the air, then you can go to all these different levels, and hopefully everything is still working and still together. And that goes with voice, that goes with songwriting, that goes with tones and everything. It all requires some aspect of maintenance and care, you know, or even, like, I haven't really sang since I got off the road because I haven't had to. But I still do lip trills and stuff to make sure that everything's, you know, if I can still get to an F over high C at a really low volume, then I'm going to be in good shape. You know, if I sang a show, I'd probably sound like Rod Stewart by the end of it. You know, I don't mean the way he sings, I mean the way he talks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would probably just push too hard because it's not loose and elastic the way you would be on tour. But, you know, like I said, I haven't really, there's a mic right here. This room was just completed 2 or 3 months ago. So you know, all the music that I'm working on now, I sing the ideas, like I'll play the music from the speakers that are here, and I'll sing the idea into my phone really quietly so that I can remember it. I don't even have the right mic cables to hook up my mic right for singing. So I'm just like, I'll get to it, you know.
Are you feeling, can you say which direction you're kind of writing in, like for another big record or something else? Or?
Well, I mean, that's what's going to be on the horizon first, I would imagine. And you know what, having said that, there are some of these things that I've been working on that I'm like, that's not big rec. I played some for Tyler the other day. And she was loving it, and then, oh, this is great. Oh, this is, you know. And then there was one in particular that she was like, sort of, you know, it's a real departure. And I love it. But it's not big rec. you know, and I was trying to sell her on it in a way, you know, like, trust me, man, once Chuck gets around this and Dave puts his thing on this, it's going to be, once I start singing on it, that's when it's going to, she's like, no, this isn't Big Rec. So, you know, there's always going to be things that it's like, okay, I love this, but it's not for, and then, you know, for the Big Rec thing, I think we've been able to get away with some pretty heavy stuff, which is not really my natural thing. I love doing it, don't get me wrong, but it's not like I don't sit around, I don't put on Gojira when I'm sitting around doing the dishes. You know, I'm listening to Steely Dan or something. Like I you know, put on some Supertramp when I'm cleaning but having said that, I love playing it. It's just so much fun, and you really, you know.
Speaking of heavy stuff, though, I have to ask you on this. Let me just pull it up real quick. On this last record, there's a tune. I'm trying to remember what the name of the tune is. Let's see. But it sounded like to me, like I heard the riff. There was one heavy riff, and I was like, oh, dude, I wonder if Ian listened to Devin Townsend at all ever. Have you ever listened to his stuff ever?
No, yeah.
Oh, it's even cooler that you haven't, because when we get done with this pod, I'm gonna send you a song. I'll find the riff.
I hear great things about him. He seems like a wonderful guy. We have some mutual friends, and everybody speaks very highly of him.
Yeah.
This is an incredibly talented guy. I've never, I mean, apart from what I've sort of stumbled across online, you know, it's all very low tune and very heavy.
He's really,
but really heavy. But I've never, like, I don't own any records. I've never done the deep dive and listened to it like that, you know?
Yeah. He's interestingly parallel to you in a strange way, because he does the singing, the guitar, the primary writer, and he's the mastermind behind his whole project, and he's really varied. Like, he's known for really heavy stuff, but he's such a softie and such an ambient guy. He has records that don't ever really get heavy at all, you know? And
that's cool.
But there's some riff. I'll find the song and I'll match it up with one of the ones. And I'm like, I sent it to him right away. I was like, dude, it almost sounds like Ian might be listening to one of your tunes, because this is kind of close. And he's like, oh, dude, it's really good. He's like, man, he was like really like remarking about your guitar playing too. And yeah, interesting.
I know. I wouldn't have. I'm pretty upfront about like where I get influence from, you know.
Sure.
But so if I had, I would be like, oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But no. No, there's some, like, I think there's definitely some King's X stuff that had seeped in there.
Mm-hmm.
Not some of the lower tuned stuff. Yeah, like I'm pretty like the usual suspects for me.
Yeah, that's there's King's X, man. Speaking of, that's a great band. I can't believe that they're actually potentially putting out a new record at some point here. Super excited about that. And would you say that, like, this last record, But for the Sun, I keep that's the right name, right? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so bad with remembering some of that stuff. But for the Sun, yeah. I mean, this, to me, like, I go back and listen to the catalog, and I've liked a lot of the Big Rec stuff, and all the different elements. But I started with Thornley. And shout out to my buddy Troy Monteforte up in Seattle, who just came by my desk one day when I was working at Mackie and Ampeg, and was like, "Hey, I got like a big hard drive full of music, and you should take whatever you want." And I just was like looking at it, and I was like, "Who is this band Thornley? Do I want them?" And he's like, "You want them, dude. You want them." And I was like, "Okay." And so I remember I just started working out to that first record, and I was just like, "Man, this vocalist is so killer, and like band is so killer." And then it was years later before somebody's like, "Oh, that's the Big Rec guy," and I'm like, "I don't know who." what, you know? And then so this album to me, because it feels like maybe the overall maybe most heavy record. Am I wrong about that? I mean,
yeah, I guess so. I mean, there's always heavy stuff. We always sort of pepper a record with some, you know, heavy riffs
sure.
and whatnot. But I haven't really looked at it like that. I guess so. It's the most of the sort of rock and roll, raw, rough and ready.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably got a tougher feel overall. It's not as refined and polished, and that's by design. Most of its first takes, second takes, and we wanted to keep it that way, you know.
Like that, maybe
more like there's a band in the room just going for it, and I wanted that, you know.
Thank you for that, because it's there's a, you know, as you know, a lot of music is so clean these days, and like even though I'm a fan of clean and the whole deal, it's nice when it's not when all the air isn't sucked out of it.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
That's nice.
It's nice to hear the room sometimes, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah, and just hearing air in front of drums or between the vocals and the mic, there's little pockets of space that when we first, you know, how it happens, like technology blooms and you're like, oh, now we can do all this.
Yeah.
Oh, now we can do all this, and everybody's like overusing it. Oh, that's sucking it all out. And you're like, dude, listen how pristine and clean and futuristic. You're like, yes.
It's a different focus for sure. Knowing, like even demoing here, I constantly I run into that. I don't know if it's a problem, but it can be. Where I just keep layering. I just keep putting more and more ideas on. And how much is too much until you're starting to detract from whatever that seed was at the beginning. And I think back to when we did our first record, which was demos, but we were on 24 track. We had done some demoing prior to that in Forest's garage. Like we were all living in a garage like this. It used to be, I think, an auto, like a mechanic's garage kind of thing, but now it was an apartment where Forrest lived just outside of Boston. Brian and I moved in there with him.
Oh, wow.
And we did some demoing there, but even then it was just sort of, it was minimal. And it was, you know, there was only a couple of mics, and I can't remember what we were going into, but it wasn't that many tracks. So essentially my point being, you had to choose your parts carefully, you know? And the difference nowadays is you don't have to. You can have 120 tracks of guitar alone. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
So when you're thinking about, something that I think about is that I'm putting a song together and I have all my parts in my head and I know the changes and I know dynamically where it's going to go and what it's going to do. And it's like, well, I want a sort of a deluxe reverby sound in the verse. And then I want a big bloated Marshall in the chorus. Well, what if I had to do it on the same thing? You know? So what we used to do, like on the first record and even the second record, is you'd have guitars that would go the whole way through the song. And then you'd use your volume knob for the verse, and you'd crank it up and step on something for the chorus. And there's as opposed to nowadays, it's just like, well, I'm just going to plug in direct for the verses, and then we're going to take a thing and, you know, here's our chorus sound. And there is something cool about that, a complete scene change, and it's a dramatic shift. But I don't know, I like having that thread between the parts of a song, and then I'll add above and below and within. Like, I mean, I'm always coming up with more ideas to throw on existing ideas to make them, in my mind, better. But sometimes it's probably detracting and pulling focus from, you know, that's like who's going to decide which part's the coolest, you know? Like if I think back and tried to, like if I played you some of the tracks that are on songs of mine that you might know, it'd be like, I never knew that was in there. It's like, I've even forgotten some of the things that are tucked. You know, and Ratsy and I will just go hog wild with overdubbing and ideas. And but for the Sun, I think there's very minimal overdubbing, and there's not a lot of like maybe a couple ding dongs here and there, and there's not an acoustic on the whole record. When I love sparkling, acoustics sprinkled in there to sort of pull the listener in a bit. But the more live, the better for that one. Who knows what the next record is going to be like? But that was our intent for that one.
That's awesome. I love it when, especially when you get as intimate with an album over time, and the little things that, especially when you listen to headphones, or if you have a chance to listen to a real big hi-fi or something that really exposes the little undercurrents that the artist will tuck in there. Like, so I really love that.
I love that. Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Do you, and as far when you're writing, is there any method in the process? Like, does a melody come first oftentimes, or is it just kind of sometimes through like reacting to a guitar and a pick that day, and just how
it could be that. It all different things. It happens all different ways. And I try not to have a system. With an interview with Sting years ago, where he's like, no, that's backwards. You have to. I write the title of the song first, and then I write backwards from that. Like that's your chorus, and then you just write. I've never really tried that. I've had, I know a lot of guys that do. They have lists and lists of quote unquote bumper stickers, that sort of like things that this is a great title for a song. I don't know. I'm like the Tom Petty quote where he said, "I only trust it if they all come in on the same bus." I believe in that. So generally speaking, it's music first, and I'll start hearing things in my head with it could be as simple like a tuning or a change or a sound or whatever it is. Certain instruments sometimes have a story to tell you. You pick it up and it's just like, okay, what's this? And then you just follow it. Sometimes it all comes at once, and sometimes you have to hack away at it for a bit. But usually, sometimes the song will give you a melody, and it's like, this is the only melody that you can sing here, because this is the only one. And that's a lot easier sometimes than something that's a little more wide open, where I could sing anything over this and it'll sound right. And I run into that situation sometimes too. And it's a pain in the ass, frankly, because I'm like, well, what do I do here? So maybe in that situation, it'd be nice if I had a sheet of lyrics and I could just start riffing on that. But I don't sit down at a typewriter like Bob Dylan and, here's my lyrics. Let's make a song. I've never been that guy. I'll jot down a phrase or write something into my phone. I'm like, ooh, that's a cool turn of phrase or whatever. And sometimes they end up getting used, but generally speaking, I did something better. The song will give me something better, The music, if you're tuned to the right channel and you're listening to things the right way, it'll tell you what it wants, and it'll tell you, it whispers. You know what I mean? Yeah. You just kind of have to be listening.
So it kind of sounds like you're telling me that it's about just honing the craft and listening to see what wants to come through. It is kind of a part of your creation process, like, as you're playing, as you're forming the layers. And
I think I mean, again, it's one of those things you learn along the way, sort of by default, because there's a million things that I still have ideas that sneak their ways into songs that have been kicking around for 20 years, because every time I tried to force them into something else, or force something else around them, or try to pair them with another part or whatever, it sounded forced. So, who's to say that initial idea was a bad one? I don't think so. I don't really put a time frame on musical ideas. You know, there's not like, well, if I came up with it 20 years ago, then it sucked. No, I don't think so. If it's good, it's good. I don't give a shit when.
Sure.
It'll be good 20 years from now, you know? So I think it's one of those things that just sort of being patient. If you get impatient, you can force something. And I'm one of those people that can hear that even in other people's music. I'm like, that's a terrible change. The rest of it is so strong, and that change is shit. And I know that the person that's made this knows that it's not as strong. But if you turn it up real loud, it's awesome. But you know what? If you listen really quietly and everything else is giving you goosebumps and moving you. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it sounds like a used car salesman ad. This is terrible.
Yeah, it turns into
and then
something
it comes
disingenuous.
back and it's like, oh, this is a dream. You know what I mean? I can always tell. It's like, well, well, you forced it. It just, you have to wait for it to incubate and let it hatch itself. It you know, and sometimes that can be a craft issue as well. You know, there's the inspiration and the arty part of it, and the sort of the flowery thing of just, you know, maintaining an openness and hopefully having a guitar in your hands when something falls in your lap from wherever it comes from, and then here you go, and there's your gift. What do you do with it? Sometimes it's a whole thing. Sometimes it's just a little something, and you need to clear it off, and you need to, you know, just sort of scrub away everything and see what you've got. And then the craft comes in. It's okay. I need to write something here. But what you write there has to be just as strong. You know, you can't phone in or mail in any aspect of it, or people will know. You know, I know. There's things that I've done where I cringe. I'm like, God, that was cheap. You know, what a shitty rhyme. Who rhymes it? You know, like stuff like that. Like, whatever, man. Listen to how high I'm screaming it. You know, that kind of stuff. It just, sometimes just, you know, volume isn't enough. You know, there needs to be some musical substance there. So, yeah. And you know, what I was saying before, I'm not discounting that method of writing songs, by the way. You know, like Bob Dylan is arguably one of our greatest songwriters of all time.
Sure.
And his method is his method, like how, but having said that, him, like others, I could read their lyrics and be fine, you know, be just fine, because you get so much juice just from the written word. Whereas some of the other songwriters that I really admire, if you read the written word, it's cool, I guess, but it doesn't have the same juice or impact as when you hear it performed and you hear it in a piece of music. And I think, generally speaking, that those are the ones that came in, as Tom Petty said, on the same bus. You know what I mean? When I'm listening to a piece of music and I know where the melody is, I sort of humming it, and then something will pop out phonetically. And it's like, well, that didn't necessarily come from me. That came from the music. That was something that it said here. Go here. You know, it could just be a hint of something. And then if it's right, you can feel it. If it's the right lyric, and you can imagine. I was talking about this the other day with somebody, and it's the written word is as important as how it sounds in a melody, and as important as how it's performed. You know, to me, not necessarily live. Of course, it's important live. You know, and that's huge for us. We're a big. We focus on the live show a lot. But I mean, when you listen to it, the record, the performance of the vocal on the record, like, it can't just be like, well, he's saying the right thing at the right time and he's hitting the right notes at the right time. It's like, but is there something there? Does it sound like he means it? You know, or she? That's what I react to, the melody, and then the performance, and then the lyric, you know? Not like the lyric doesn't mean anything. It's just that that's sort of the things that affect me. It's third in line. You know?
Well, then it seems, yeah, I can appreciate that. And like going back to like you saying it's not necessarily wrong to do it another way.
Yeah.
Because all the paths kind of lead home, so to speak, eventually, right? And some people can write a song title out and just be so inspired by that kind of crowning place and work backwards.
It's like Sting's one of my favorite songwriters. I think he's brilliant, beautiful songwriter.
Yeah.
I was just like, what? So you're telling me you wrote every little thing she does is magic on a fucking piece of paper? I don't know if I buy that one. But
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do da. Let's not use those as an example, but you know, I could see him. I hung my head because they did. There you go. There's a title that there's an image that just there's so many stories that lead to that image.
Yeah.
And I can see that, but I've just never sort of approached it that way.
I like the way that, I mean, I have similar inspirations. I have inspirations that are verbal and word based, and I'll put them kind of like you're saying, I'll put them into a file and maybe they make it into something.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I'm more of the type of person that wants to hear what somebody else has to offer. So if we're in a band environment, I'm like, oh, what do you guys jamming on? Okay, what key is that? Okay, let's just jam. And I try to be reactive and try to add to what's happening or what's, you know, play with what's present, so to speak. And in my solo time writing, which I haven't been in a band environment in a long time, so it oftentimes is me and Tune Track. I pull up some cool drum beat and I'm like, oh, can I play bass to this? You know? Oh, that makes me want to do this thing on bass. I love that beat. Right. And then I just let it grow, you know, above and below and layer things. And then some of the stuff turns out the way I like it. And some of it, it stays in a file somewhere, you know, but.
Yeah, I think it's like knowing when to turn your mind on and off, you know, when you're in the studio or when you're writing, when you're creating, knowing when it's time to turn that engine on and when it's time to turn it off, and then being able to do so. It's a hard thing, and it's a tough skill to learn, you know, especially in the studio when you know what you want, you know, and it's not like you want it to be okay. You want it to be great. So yeah, it's, you know, it's one of those things that, like, even the smallest drop of doubt, if you're on the fence about something, you know, and you ask somebody, especially somebody that you care about, what do you think? They'd be like, hey, you sure you want to? That's it. It's done. For me, that's something I've learned the hard way. It's done. It's over. I don't want to put that on a record. Because every time I'm just going to be like, people are second guessing this when they hear this. Do you know what I mean? Because of one person's opinion, and that, you know, that's on me. That's not on them. They're just being honest. But the fact that I'm going to get all that bent out of shape about it, but it really is one of those things. I keep the doors closed in the studio for just that reason. I don't want to turn back and see the look on somebody's face that, you know, or see them on their phone. Fuck. Well, there's another one that's not good enough. Scratch it. Next. You know what I mean?
Do you have like a big bin of, or, you know, file of the songs and the things that didn't make it, so to speak?
You know, I'm less and less like that nowadays. Like I know what's good for us and what's not. For me, anyway. I still do kind of closely guard things when we're working them up. Especially when something's not done. You know, you're asking, say that's a big ask of somebody, certainly if they're not a musician. It's a big ask of somebody to, you know, imagine what it's going to be like when it's done. You know? Totally. And then when you don't get the same reaction because you're hearing it done in your head, it's just not, you haven't quite finished it, you know? So It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. And it depends. If you know you've got something that's really special, then it's like, well, they're fucking wrong. That's it. But if it is something that you're on the fence about, you know, some people love it, some people don't. Unless I feel really strongly about it, you know, I've got plenty of other music that I can dick around with. Who knows? These days I'm a little different. I think, you know, I've sort of grown out of that a little bit.
That's good. That's good.
Hopefully.
Do you think you'll ever do an instrumental record? I
don't know. Like I said, I haven't spent enough time in that world with that kind of music. Yeah. I've listened to a fair amount of it. But even then, I tend to get a little bored. You know, like I can't listen to a whole record of instrumental music. I can get 2 or 3 songs in, and some of it, frankly, is just not my taste. It's not my bag. Like, sure. Why are you playing a vocal melody? You know, unless it's like something that's more groove based and sort of like those old Jeff Beck records. I get that, because that's more like there's a whole tone to that. You know, like Wired and Truth and those kind of. Is it Truth and or what are the Blue Wind and all those? You know what I'm talking about? The sort of Jeff Beck records from the 70s that Glyn Johns did. I get that, because it's a whole thing, you know. It's a different channel to tune to. But some of them are like, they sound like they're coming in on my channel, you know. So it's like, well, these are the same changes as a Tom Petty song, but there's no fucking Tom Petty, and there's no great lyrics, there's no great singing. There's just a guitar playing the same melody.
It's probably, know? I mean, it's because,
and then, let's wait till the solo, though. Wait till the solo, because it's so fast. that doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah. You know? I can see that.
Not really my bag. Having said that, we did one on that Dunlop session thing.
Yeah, it's great.
We tried to do it, but that was just that was our version of, it was a mishmash. It was a bunch of riffs that I really dug, and it was Garth's idea, and it was like, I just kind of looked at it like a challenge, you know, and then it kind of grew, and we really loved it. We loved doing it. So who knows? Who knows? Well, could I do a whole record of that though? I don't know. Maybe an EP.
Maybe not. Maybe an EP or something. But because you have that attitude towards it, it makes me curious how you would do your version of a thing. You know, because. And to back up, I want to answer the reason why people, my answer for why people are playing a vocal melody with guitars, because they can't sing like you, because they don't have if they had the capacity, I'm sure we all would. We'd be like, yo, like here's my thing. But
at the same time, there's something to be said for playing lyrically, you know. But if you're doing instrumental music, you might want to have more going on than a pop song.
Sure.
Musically. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That makes sense.
It sounds like I'm ripping on people, but I'm not. I just, you know, I'd rather listen to 3 chords in the truth with a vocal than 3 chords in the truth with an Ibanez. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I can hear that.
And having said that, the really complex stuff has to have melody. And this is just me. It's just for my own taste. And the really complex stuff, some of it's really interesting and really cool. I don't know. It's hard for me to say, because I'm starting to sound like a dick, like I'm ripping on people. And I'm not.
No,
I think there's room for everybody. This is my own taste, like what I would put on and what I would listen to.
Sure.
If something starts to sound show-offy, I'm like, yeah, you're awesome. You're really good. That's not what music's about for me, you know?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a great insight into how you see and perceive music.
Nothing wrong with wanting to show off and wanting to just rip something. And, you know, I'd love to try and do that myself as often as I can get away with it.
Sure.
Quite frankly, because sometimes I won't let myself get away with it. I'm like, no, that sounds indulgent. That sounds. Sometimes the indulgent thing can be cool. Sometimes it's just indulgent. I don't know. And again, there's no fucking rules. There's no rules. I'm talking out of my ass. There's no rules.
Oh man, your opinion matters though. Your opinion matters in a really cool way, because
my opinion matters in this room. That's about it.
Well, but to your fans and to the followers, I think that there's a lot of we just admire that you have at the very least these three major ways of approaching music, and how you build and through your vocal abilities and the way you see the world through being a vocalist, and then as a guitar player, and through your technique and songwriting ability, and then the greater scope of being assembling a band and working through those layers and hashing out like the way the songs are structured and how you're going to present them. Yeah. So all that is a really interesting filter, I think. At least it is for me, and I think it's probably some shared with a lot of other people, just to hear that way of there is no wrong way, but it's cool to hear how you see it.
Yeah, I mean, there's, and again, this is like, it's not like I ever wrote anything like Every Breath You Take, or some worldwide huge smash. I've never written anything like that, so I've just kind of fumbled around and figured out things on my own. Some stuff kind of works, some stuff doesn't, and when it kind of works, it just means we get to make another record. It's not like, well, now you get to gold plate your fourth house. It's
right.
Not that kind of thing. So I've never had like, well, this is the tried and true, this is the method. I don't think, and I don't think there is one. Sting can do it that way and have those kind of results, which are worldwide smash killer hits, but are also incredibly high quality, clever, beautifully written music. There's a lot to be said for that. It's not my way, but, I guess my way, I end up in a shitty little basement and not in France or wherever he is.
Oh,
so don't
yeah.
listen to me.
But you're speaking of being, I mean, you're such a gifted dude. I will say, I mean, you have such a wonderful wife, Tyler, and tell me, I mean, how are things with the baby?
He's great. It's a lot different than my daughter. He's the loudest child I've ever been around. Really? Well, Tyler's a singer as well, and a wonderful singer at that. And I don't know if it's because of that, but he likes to be loud. He likes volume, just straight up volume. He took his first steps last week. Ooh. Now he's plunking around all over the place. Wow. He's napping well. He's a great kid. He's, very curious, say a few words, sort of say a few words. He's huge. He's bigger than most 2-year-olds, and he just turned 1. Wow. And yeah, he's adorable. But yeah, my tinnitus, I've never really suffered from tinnitus, or maybe just never noticed as much as I do now, because he'll give you a blast, and like there's an extra frequency that's resonating in my head, like and there's like going on inside my head. Wow. And it's actually, it'll blur my vision first. It's brutal. And sometimes it feels like somebody just hit me with a cattle prod or something. Go. He's just looking at you with a smile. As if you can't get mad, but I go to bed and my ears are just throbbing. Like, I don't work loud down here. We're not soundproofed. Right. I work pretty quiet. It's not me. It's the little guy. And I know T is she's complained about his volume. It's something we just kind of like try not to react to it, and hopefully it's a phase that he'll grow out of. But it's been great. It's been, it's been weird that he can't go to the park, chill with other kids. And there's some of that, but I mean, he doesn't know the difference. So
sure.
It'll just be, it'll be a whole new world when he is able to, go to play centers and drop-in centers and go to the park. And, but yeah, it's definitely a weird time for that stuff.
What is the vibe there in Toronto? I mean, is it kind of just super shut down everywhere else? Or
pretty much the same. Actually, I don't know. I've been trying to stay away from the news as much as I can, but the stuff that I have heard sounds pretty weird. What's going on in the States, but here it's pretty much. I mean, the other day, 3 days ago, it went up to 21. Felt like 24, 25. Like it was a summer day. It was the warmest day of the year for sure. And it was like, I went for a bike ride and I was longboarding down my street with my daughter, and it was a great day. But as we were riding our bikes, and it's sort of swerving around other cyclists and stuff, and you could hear other cyclists talking to each other saying, well, did you hear about so-and-so park? Like, people are just everywhere. It's packed. I'm like, man, give people the chance. They're gonna not follow the rules, as it were. But it's been, it's been weird and rough. And if you go to the store, you're wearing a mask and you're staying a certain distance away. And that's pretty much it. It's not, there's no going out. There's no restaurants. There's no social. I haven't seen a friend in a long time. I mean, Chris Cadell came by a couple of weeks ago. He wanted me to swap a pick guard on one of his guitars. So he pulled up on the curb and left the guitar on the porch, and then went back to the curb, and I opened the door and was kind of like, hey, Chris, it's good to see you. And it was good to fucking see anybody. And it was it's been weird. So yeah, it's weird for everybody, I'm sure. We're all scared. Like, how am I going to make a living? What am I going to do? I can't play shows. It's weird. I'm sure it's that way everywhere in the world.
Yeah. That leads me to ask a couple other follow-up questions. Have you guys talked about doing any live type of streaming of any kind?
We've been talking about it, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few ideas in the works that it's like, well, here's something that we can do that would be cool. Because the last thing I would want to do is something that's half-assed.
Right.
Something that's not up to our standard, and it's out there forever.
Right.
So yeah, we've talked about how can we do this our way, and those conversations continue to happen. There's a few ideas that we're going to put into motion as well. Some of them have already begun. We'll see where they end up.
One of the really cool live stream things that I've been taking part in is the Erykah Badu live streams that she's been doing. I don't know if you're familiar with her too much or her music, but
yeah, I know who she is.
She's been doing like stream concerts every couple of weeks from her house, and like the first week it's an interactive too, so you can choose which song they're going to play next. Like say this song or that song, and then we kind of vote. The second one they did was you could choose which room they were going to go into next. She had multiple rooms set up in the house for different sounds and different vibes, and everybody. So the first week she did it $1. You pay $1, and she had over like 1 million people show up and pay $1 to be on that stream. And the second one was $2. Third one was $3. And she's building this thing that I really, and she's so artistic and so like yourself in the sense that she's like, I'm not going to do it half-assed. I'm going to do something cool and artistic each time. Yeah. I don't want to waste your time. I want it to be as close to like what you would get.
Yeah. Be an experience.
Yep.
Yeah. It's tough for me. I'm not great with those kinds of ideas, Tyler's that kind of person. She just, she can just kind of stream of consciousness, like all these goose egg, beautiful, golden egg, beautiful ideas, just one after the other. How do you do this? I'm a singular focused kind of guy when it comes to that. I'm just like basically write songs, sing and play them, record them, and repeat.
and how? And what about Chris? Is Chris going to be staying in the band for the time being, or?
Yeah, for sure. Like I, you know, as long as he wants the gig, it's his. You know, but I somewhere towards the end of that tour, I was like, so are you the new guitar player in Big Wreck, or are you the new guitar player in Big Wreck? He's like, you looking serious, man? So he seemed like he was jazzed about the idea of sort of joining the band. And of course, man, I love the guy. I've known him for a long time, and you know, he's a tremendous character and a hell of a musician as well. So yeah, right now he's the fourth member.
That's awesome.
There's no photos with him. I saw the Big Wreck site posted another photo of you know, one of the photo shoots we did whenever we did them, which is well before the record came out or the tour or anything. But yeah, we were still the three of us. But no, there's an energy and a chemistry with him that feels natural, and it feels like it's been there forever, but it also feels somewhat fresh, you know. And I think the three of us would I don't think it'd be hard to find somebody else to do that, you know. If it wasn't him, I think we'd probably stay a three-piece.
Such a massive talent, and I'll never forget that night you took me when I was there in Toronto. You and Chad took me out to see him play, and I was like blown away.
Orbit,
Orbit Room or something. Right?
The Orbit Room. I think that might be. Well, everything's closed now, but I don't know. I heard some weird things, but who knows? I don't go out, so.
Sure.
But no, he's great, and like I said, you know, he's a great guy. So like when you're on the road for that last run was like 4 months or something.
Wow. You
got to get along with somebody, you know, and that's you have to trust them. You have to, you know, there's a depth to your relationship that goes beyond, you know, an hour and a half on stage or whatever, 2 hours on the stage. It has to be there, and it's definitely there with him. I love the guy to bits, and I think it'd be honored to. But I think he is. I mean, I don't know if there's been an official thing yet, but I'm pretty sure he is.
All right, Chris. Well, just if you're watching this, you're in the band, so
he is.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
Yes, he is.
Has there been any thoughts or any desire to resume to a third guitarist situation, or
I'd love to. There's just I don't know who it would be, right? Like Paulo would be the natural, but Paulo got his own thing going. Like he's got his own. Did
he move out of town or something, or?
No. He's been in. I think he's Kitchener.
Oh, he's still close.
Just like an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
But yeah, he made a sort of a life change, you know. Like he had a little boy at home, and he has a certain skill set where he could make some good bank and be at home with his family. And I'm like, I'm not going to argue with that. You know, I love that guy to bits too. There was never any animosity, and like, he left because he wants to, you know, pursue his reggae career. Or, you know, I want to play straight ahead, man. You know, it was nothing like that. It was like, well, I have this opportunity, and you know, I can make bank, and I can have benefits, and I can be home every night for dinner.
It's the dream.
That sounds great, man. You know, wish him all the best. I still talk to him all the time. I still see him, and
that's awesome.
Know, God bless him. I love him. I mean, that was one of those things that the three guitar players, that kind of happened by accident, you know. And I don't know if like the chemistry would have to be right, not just personally, but musically, because there was a thing that there was a push and pull with Brian and Paulo, that they would really sort of tonally would go for different things, and one would be ahead of the beat while the other was behind slightly, and you know, it was one of those things. And then would come to time for the chorus where we all hit the same thing at the same time, and there was this impact You know, you'd have to be the right kind of player and like the right kind of music to be able to fit into what the four of us are doing now. Because there's quite a racket just with Chris and I playing guitars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and again, Chris is somebody who comes from a totally different place than Brian and Paulo. Much more similar to where I came from, sort of guitaristically. But it's, you know, it's always going to be different with different personalities and different players. And I don't know, I'd be open to the idea, but you know, especially nowadays, if there's no shows, nobody's making any money. If you would want to do it for free, absolutely, come on.
Who's got the chops?
Yeah. Well, it'd be a cool idea.
I'm so thankful that I was able to capture Brian and Paulo together in the Dunlop sessions, like being, you know, hindsight being 2020, pun intended. I'm super thankful that it happened and went down the way it did, because I got to
quite a thing,
spend a couple days with you guys and go out to dinner and just soak up Brian in general, like just the fact that and then I got to see him on the last tour too, which was really cool. Right, or not the last tour, in SF, I mean. Yeah. That's really I'm really thankful for that. I'm curious, as I like to ask a lot of my guests, just like, I'm curious about like what, if you have any kind of life philosophy or any things that are tenets that kind of keep you motivated and creative or grounded.
Not really. I've just I tried to figure out ways, like I said earlier, trick myself into being inspired, you know? I got a few tricks that I'll use now and then. Sometimes those run out, or they dry up a little bit for a little bit, and then you can revisit them later. I don't know. I try to, like my friend Timmy says, that don't sweat the small stuff. And by the way, it's all small stuff. I try to remember that, because I'll get wound up about something or other. And, you know, certainly all this shit that's going on in the world right now, it's easy for me to sort of spiral and it'll just get really anxious. And I try to focus on the now and really sort of be present with whatever's happening, and, you know, try to appreciate the little things that are, you know, that's sort of where I'm at. I think like Tyler and I have really gotten into a rhythm where we're both really quick with a laugh right now, and that kind of thing, and just really keeping everything light, because it's weird, you know. It's it's a difficult time for everybody. I'm sure everybody's got their own little methods by now. It's like they become routine for all of us, whatever our personal method is. But, you know, that seems to be working for us. Like little things. Weather's nice. That puts a smile on your face. That'll make my day. You know?
Yeah.
That was a good cup of coffee. All right. You know?
Yeah.
Just keep it simple, and it seems to be working pretty well. And let's be honest, like I've said this before, like I'm like one step away from being agoraphobic. Like if I get off, my whole life is out, right? Like when I'm on the road, I'm out. I'm away from home, and when I'm home, I'm definitely a homebody. You know, so this isn't a big stretch for me. It's just, you know, because I'm still doing what I would have been doing anyway.
Sure.
Minus, you know, going out to a movie or restaurants and things like that. But I can certainly feel the tension rising, and not seeing anybody, not seeing family, not seeing friends, and, you know, it's important to figure out what works for you and make sure it works for everybody else around you in your immediate vicinity, so that you can all hunker down and get through it together. You know? Yeah.
Well, it's good that you and Tyler have each other and seem to have like a fairly balanced way of approaching it. That's such a big deal for me, kind of being on my own. Thankfully, I have a dog. My dog definitely keeps me kind of grounded and like remembering the small things. She's just like, we need to play. We need to go outside. We need to do the thing, you know, like her basic needs are so fundamentally healthy for me
Yeah.
to adhere to that, you know? So I'm just like, oh, I'll let you be, you guide me. You're the wizard, you know?
Just do the shit.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I hear you, man. It makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a 1,000 questions that people had asked, but I'm not going to be able to go through even a fraction of them. But somebody was asking if there was like a for sure story on the name of the band, Big Wreck. Was there
A for sure story?
Yeah, like a story of like
it was just an expression that Brian used to use, you know.
Oh.
We were called Still Waters for a bit. That never really fit quite right. Big Wreck still doesn't fit quite right. Both Brian and I hated it.
Really?
It was something that he kind of, you know, he would use it. It was just sort of part of this, like the New York vernacular that I thought was kind of cool. And we were like, oh, cool. We didn't think much beyond that. And I was like, this doesn't really suit us, does it? It's like, well, that's what you got. So, you know, what's in a name, I guess.
No, it's cool. I think it's a cool I assume that it's like a term using in like, well, this is the big wreck, like kind of like life, or in terms of like somebody being, the way I interpret it is like, oh, that's a big wreck, you know?
Exactly.
You know, type of thing.
It's like something's a shit show, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That guy's a big wreck. Yeah.
Big wreck. And I'm sure we've all experienced being our own version of a hot mess, a shit show, you know, in our lives.
Hot garbage.
Yeah, hot garbage.
Oh yeah.
Dumpster fire style. Yeah. Been
Yes.
there. Yeah. Well, the one of the last things I wanted to ask you about is like, what have you been listening to? Do you listen to music while you're writing? Number one, and if you have been listening to music, share any of that with us.
Well, I don't. I don't know when I can. I like to really, if I'm going to listen to something and listen to it, I like to really dig into it. You know, so sometimes in the car I'll turn something up, and it's the usual suspects because I need my time with Trick of the Tail, or I need my time with, you know, Dark Side, or whatever record. Or I've been doing a deep dive on some Yes music, going back to that. But nothing as far as new stuff. I don't know. Little Feat, that's new for me. I never really got into Little Feat. Now I'm right in. I love it. Yeah, it's the usual suspects. Like anybody, you know, you just listen to my music, you'll know what it is that I listen to.
Do you have a favorite Rolling Stones album?
Not really.
Are you a Stones fan at all?
Fan, to be honest.
Not really a fan?
Not really, no. Nothing wrong with it. It's what it is. I remember hearing, it was in somebody's car, and they had a live record, Rolling Stones live record from like 1991 or something. And it was turned way up in their car. And I was like, I get it. I finally get the Stones. I was like, this is fucking awesome. This is great. And it was loosey-goosey, and you could hear Keith and Ronnie doing whatever they were doing, but it was working, you know? So I think I get it. And there are some great moments to me musically. There's some wonderful moments, but I don't know, for the most part, I don't know if I've ever really taken down a whole record, to be honest, top to bottom. I'd love to say like Exile, bar none.
Right.
Stick fingers, you know. I know all the titles because they're so iconic, but I don't know if I've ever. I know the hits, you know.
I'm kind of the same. My stepdad, actually, I grew up with him really loving the Stones, and I had a bunch of people around me that loved the Stones. And the only reason why I bring it up now is that I'm bad with song titles, but it was probably, I don't know, it's like a record or two. It was, maybe it's for in honor of a loving memory of record or something. There's a song that reminded me of a Stones like one riff or something, and I was like, oh, that throws me into something.
You Don't Even Know. It sounds like Miss You, right? Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
No, it's great though. But it takes its own thing. It's its own, but it just has this little bit of like a something. And then I was like, oh.
Unfortunately, the demo and I think the initial recording of that was way cooler, I think, than how it ended up being mixed. I wasn't really happy with the mix of that song in particular. Like, Randy's an amazing mixer, and he kicked the shit out of everything else. Like, he's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But he took that in a direction, like his vision for it was different than what my initial intention was to have it. The drums were recorded tight and dry and sort of small and sort of camel fart dry, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he heard it as a little more up to date, a little more modern and big and, you know, wide. And I'd heard it as more of a lo-fi kind of punchy down the middle thing. But, you know, who knows? I'm going to take that guy's advice 9 times out of 10 anyway, because he's Randy style.
Yeah,
I say, he's probably not sitting in a shitty little basement, right?
Probably not.
But no, I just I think it to me it lost something when it became a big modern rock thing, because it did have this quirky 70s thing that's sort of blurred or foggy now. But whatever, you know, I still love the tune.
Yeah. It might have even been a little more Stones sounding had it been in
sure.
that
That's
first.
Kind of how I do it. Like, if I want to go for something, I go all the way, you know?
Yeah.
I don't just, well, generally speaking, like if I want to go for a Zepp sound, I'm going to go for the drum sound, and I'm going to try to fit those pieces together. If something's not working, I'll change it on the fly. But, you know, I just sort of know what I like. That's a tune that has a vibe and the whole thing that, you know, like the Stones have a lot of those tunes where there's just like Give Me Shelter and things like that. They just come on and they have this energy. They have this vibe to them. I'm like, well, that's lightning in a bottle. And obviously they were able to do it again and again and again and again. Yeah, it's just one of those things. I've never really tried to pick it apart and figure out why, you know.
Mm-hmm. As you're working at home, like especially right now, are you just working just with guitar alone, or do you have some drum stuff that?
No, I just do drums digitally. I got a bass behind me. There's like keyboard. There's a keyboard here. There's a keyboard there. There's a piano upstairs. There's a mandolin. There's a cigar box. But generally speaking, I'm just on Pro Tools, and I'll program the beat to whatever I'm writing, you know. Mm-hmm. Sort of put together it'll generally start with like a 4 on the floor simple beat, whatever, you know, if we're in 4/4, and then but I'm getting pretty good with it now. Like, I can hear the kind of drum beat that I think Chuck would go toward, and I'll sort of lean that way and kind of put a, you know, sort of rudimentary groove together that'll fit around the guitars and then just sort of put the whole thing together, you know.
Would you ever have any interest or in doing like some producing of other bands in that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
it'd have to be the right thing, though. You know, it'd have to be the right band and the right music, the right people. Something you really believe in. You know, I think like I wouldn't have a lot to bring to something that I didn't like. You know, that's the problem. Like, I know a lot of producers are probably doing gigs that they don't like. So you got to pay the bills. It's like, I don't know if I'd want to do that. I don't know if I'd want to, because I know what the hours are like. Oh, man. And I know what the focus is like. To focus on something that even the artist thinks is going to be disposable. I don't want to, you know, it would have to be right. And I've talked about it with some people that, you know, even recently, that it would be cool to work together. But we'll see what happens. You know?
Well, that'd be cool. It seems like just from your vantage point that you would be able to offer the right people, as you're saying, that you feel in line with, some pretty great advice as far as, because you have so many different filters to see through. You know?
If you want it to be a big hit, don't ask me.
But if you want it to rock,
yeah,
want it to be amazing music, then they'd want to talk to you, I think.
Yeah, hopefully, you know, that's sort of. I'd rather have that. I think it lasts longer. You know.
Yeah.
I think it'll leave a little more of a mark if people can come back to the trough a few times and get something different each time. But I've been saying that in all these interviews too. Is like I kind of feel lucky that I've never had a big smash because I don't have to repeat it.
Mm.
You know, I don't have to keep doing that song, or you know, even though some people still fucking want me to. This is the first record. It's 20 years ago. It's you know, or Albatross. That's our only number one was Albatross. Okay. But it was number one up here for a while in Canada. So it's not like people are expecting another Albatross, you know?
Right.
So I'm kind of lucky I get to experiment and try stuff on.
It's kind of an interesting blessing and a curse when you get some sort of success with any type of sound or formula. I seen that with Devin Townsend too. He kind of never conformed to anything, and then all of a sudden he clicked on one album, kind of clicked, and everybody wanted more of that, you know, and he kind of got stuck for a while. He's like, I got to make more of those records now, or kind of, you know, not that exact record, but he had great success, and he's now past that and been able to do more progressive, like avant-garde stuff again. But he felt for a while, he's like a good 5 or 6 albums. He's kind of like this is the thing and everybody wants it. And I'll keep writing it. It's fine, but not forever, you know?
Yeah.
Couldn't stay there forever.
I don't really feel that yet. I mean, you know, maybe lucky. I mean, having said that, it'd be nice to have a huge hit. You know?
Sure.
But whatever, it's as long as we can keep the lights on and keep food on the table. Yeah, I don't have a long list of wants. I don't really give a shit. So yeah, I think you know, we've been lucky. I think as a band and myself as a writer, I've been lucky that I've been able to try different things and go in different directions, albeit it's not like, you know, it's not like I put out a fusion record, but, you know, it's been nice that fans have come with, you know, for the most part, sort of give us the benefit of the doubt. And if I ever go on one of those fan group things and read, it's just like, oh fuck, here we go, because it's like, man, last record was so much better, and then it's one of those things that like, this record isn't blah blah blah, and then you read the comments after the next record and they're like, the last record was so amazing, man, this record is, and it's just like, well, I think it's flattering in a way, but it's also frustrating, so I choose not to, you know, it's best not to read any of that shit.
No, I agree. And I love that I watch a lot of Joe Rogan. I love his interviews, and over and over and over, I've heard him give the advice to other people, say, man, don't read the comments. Yeah. Stay the fuck out of the weeds. Just
put your thing out and bounce.
Yeah, keep going. Like, yeah, keep to yourself and do the thing.
That's what Dave McMillan keeps saying to me too. He's like, don't ever, like, especially after the record comes out, I'll start fishing around and looking at, like, are people digging it? And it's just like, and then I'll start getting pissed off because people are just making stuff up. People just make things up. They'll make up numbers. They'll make up facts. They'll make up, like, well, it's because he had it mastered by blah, blah, blah. So no wonder it sounds like, it's like, that's not in front of, what? Yeah, and I just, like, and I'll start getting so angry. And then it's just like, wait a second. That doesn't fucking matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
Just say, no.
That's, I had my,
it doesn't make it true.
I had my own little taste of it recently on my YouTube channel for this podcast. Just like somebody chimed in, was like, oh man, what a horrible interview. Like, you talk too much. You talked about spiritual stuff with my other pod with Tim Miller. And I was just like, for like 5 minutes, I was like, wow, am I even doing, why am I doing this? Should I, like I had this whole like big self, and I was like, and then all of a sudden it was like, I heard Rogan in my head. I was like, oh yeah, you're not supposed to listen to comments. You're not supposed to read them. You're not supposed to internalize them, both good and bad. If you do read them, it's just a grain of salt, and it's, just keep moving.
Yeah.
Do your work.
Try to find a sense of humor in it,
Yeah.
Or at least read them with a sense of humor. Try to. If you take that shit to heart, you're in for a long day.
Yeah, you just spend all your time worrying about pleasing everybody, and you can't do that. It's an impossibility. So, do your best and try again tomorrow.
You two talk a lot, though. I'm just saying.
I do talk a lot.
I love you, Chris. You're the best. It's so good to see you.
Oh, man. I love you too, Ian. Thank you so much for taking the time, dude. It really
of course. That's what I got.
Yeah, that's what we got right now. I'm so glad that you're safe and that your family is healthy and that you're writing. That is what we all want to know. We all know that you're good,
Oh yeah. No, it's that. I always say, like, the creativity thing with writing, it's a roller coaster, and sometimes you struggle and struggle and struggle to get something that you like. And then sometimes you're up here, and every time you sit down, it's just like, man, you just try to cast the net big enough to catch all of it, because it's like, these are all fucking great. And you go like this, and it's, a week ago I was up here, and now I'm somewhere in the middle. It's a little more effort, but I can always go back to the stuff that there's always I have 30 or 40 brand new things that I can just push each one a little further down, up the field, if you will. If I'm feeling uninspired, I can just, go work on one of these things that I know that's good. I know I can just put my focus on that. I don't know if you call it writing, but I guess it is.
It's enough. Yeah. Well, sounds like you have enough variety and just a few different modalities within your sphere that you don't have to be too precious with anything, because you're always kind of coming up with new stuff, and you're like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
No, I never want to be too precious with something. I've done that before. I've had that bite me in the ass, but it's just like, you're too precious with it, and then the music itself will suffer for it. You can't be. If something's not working, it's not working. Even if you really, really love it, it's like, well, I'm still going to love it even if it's not on a record, or even if it's not part of this song. I'm going to love whatever it is that I love about this. I'm still going to love it, but it's not working. Move it aside and work on other stuff that is working. I say that a lot. And just, it can't be too religious or precious about what you're writing. If it's working, it's working. If it's not, it's not. And if it sounds good, it is good. That's it.
Amen. That's good advice to keep to heart while we're going through having a lot of time, and hopefully a lot of people are able to work, push through their little ups and downs and find their creative strides. I know I've had the same experience that you just, were giving an example of. It's just like some days, like I sit down and I have 3 to 5 things that just like, whoa, where did this all come? This is amazing. Okay, this is one of those days. I'm just going to # blessed on this one. And then,
try to document all of it, right?
Yeah, I'm just like record. Okay, save, put it in the file. And then 3 days, a week later, I sit down and I'm like, I'm going to do that thing where I write 3 songs in a day. And it's like, man, every little thing that comes out, I'm like, that's shit, delete, or whatever. Don't finish it, And so,
you have to like take them all in stride, right?
Yeah.
I always kind of look at it like when you're not, feeling that kind of juice, when things are just flowing out. There's always work to do,
Yeah.
There's plenty of work to do. So like, just sort of put my mind on that. Tyler's always talking about, like when she's doing things and like ideas, and her brain works so much faster than mine, and it's a wonder to watch. And when she's doing her thing, and she's spitballing with clients and doing her thing, and then you watch her on a computer, and it's dizzying. And then she'll take a break and do Lego or play a video game. and just use a totally different part of her brain.
Amazing.
I was like, wow. She's like, yeah, well, it's how it keeps her fresh. And I don't know if that's like I don't know where that comes from, but I mean, the science seems to work for her. And for me, like my version of that is like, I'll, you know, if it's not happening, then I'll just kind of work on other things. It's still, you know, there's still music that needs to be, there's still fucking editing that needs to be done. You know,
Right.
I need to clean up like 10 songs from 2 weeks ago that need to be cleaned up so that they work. And then of course you can just put on a metronome and shred balls, you know, just try to play as fast as humanly possible. And if it doesn't work, just pour more of this down your neck and you're good to go.
That's right. That's right.
It's caffeine in there and just.
Yeah. I love that approach, switching around. And sometimes for me, it just, if I'm not having a great day, you know, creatively, I'll just clean my space, organize my space, or change instrument, or go for a walk. Sometimes it takes me getting completely out of that particular element to be able to come back fresh, you know, after a walk or run or something like that.
Yeah, I don't clean this place very often, you can tell.
Oh, no, it doesn't matter though.
Brutal.
Yeah, that's okay. I love is that a tapestry in the back? Is like a tree of life type of thing?
Yeah, I got that in France. Like,
Beautiful.
To find a spot for it. I have all my sound absorbing stuff is currently in my dad's basement. So I moved out of my last house where all that stuff was, and I needed a place to store it. He lives right near there, so I just kind of moved it all into there. Yeah, so once we complete all this, I'll be moving all that stuff in and sort of sound treat this place a little bit.
That's awesome. Well, I hope that that goes well as you're able to make it happen. I gotta cut this off a little bit because I got another appointment and some things to get to.
I gotta go.
Yeah. Well, then it's perfect timing.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Ian. And please give my best to Tyler and the little munchkin.
For sure.
And we'll be in touch. And just thanks from the bottom of my heart, man. You're an amazing person.
All right, buddy. All the best.
Likewise.